You'd think that after 78 years of life, I'd be used to being ignored. But nothing prepares you for the gut punch of being told, without even a trace of shame, that you're not considered part of your own family anymore. My name's William. I've lived in the same house on the edge of Atlanta for almost 5 decades. Every scuff on the hardwood floors, every loose tile in the upstairs bathroom, every creak in the hallway at night. Those are mine. I built this life from the ground up. And yet, somehow I ended up sitting on my back porch, watching the sunset alone, wondering how in the hell I became nothing more than an afterthought. My wife, Marilyn, passed away 10 years ago. Pancreatic cancer took her so fast, I swear one day we were drinking coffee and laughing about the neighbor's yappy dog, and 3 months later, I was picking out her casket. We were married 48 years. You don't just bounce back from something like that. After she died, our daughter, Jessica, came by every day, for a while, then every week, then just holidays. Now, if I see her once a month, I consider it a small miracle. She says she's busy, career woman, HR at some tech company downtown, whatever. I wasn't expecting daily check-ins, but I didn't think I'd end up just a line item on her budget sheet. And don't get me started on her husband, Carl. The man's got shifty eyes and a handshake like wet tissue. He's an accountant who talks like he invented money, but the only thing he's ever been good at is figuring out how to squeeze more out of me without actually saying thank you. They've been married almost 30 years. I didn't like him then, and I sure as hell don't like him now. But Marilyn wanted to support them, so I bit my tongue, paid for the wedding, covered the deposit on their first apartment, bought their daughter, my granddaughter Emily, her first car, paid for her college tuition, covered bills when they were tight during Carl's career transition, which really just meant he didn't want to work under anyone for a while. And then 6 months ago, Jessica calls me up. "Dad," she says, "we found our dream home in Riverside Heights. Great schools, beautiful parks, close to Carl's office, but we're a little short on the down payment." A little short, my ass, $175,000. That's what she called a little, but I had it. Years of saving, careful investing. It wasn't even about the money at that point. I thought maybe, just maybe, it'd bring us closer again. Maybe she'd see how much I still cared even if I wasn't good with words. Maybe Carl would stop treating me like a damn burden. So I wrote the check, took care of paperwork, even set up automatic payments for their utilities, insurance, hell, even the damn lawn guy. All in, I was covering 135 different monthly payments. But did that bring me back into the family fold? Did it hell. They threw a housewarming dinner, invited all their coworkers and friends. When I walked in, Carl introduced me as Jessica's dad, and never mentioned that I practically paid for the place. I sat through 2 hours of stock talk, overpriced wine, and phony laughter. I didn't fit in, and I sure as hell wasn't welcome. Since then, Jessica only calls when something breaks, a leaky pipe, a weird sound in the HVAC. I show up, fix it, and get thanked with a quick sandwich or maybe a takeout coffee. No warmth, no conversation. And Carl? He gives me this tight-lipped nod like I'm some contractor they barely tolerate. So when I got that email, the one where Jessica told me not to come to Carl's promotion dinner because, and I quote, "Carl's nervous and wants only immediate family present," I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at those words. Immediate family. I wasn't in it. That was the moment. The exact moment I knew something had to change. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every single memory I had of Jessica growing up. Her first steps across our old carpet, the time she cried because a boy pushed her at recess, her high school graduation when she squeezed my hand so tight during the national anthem. I was there for all of it. I worked like a dog, 6 days a week, missed holidays, skipped vacations, but I made damn sure she never went without. So how the hell did we end up here? Me, outside the family, like some dusty photograph they forgot to hang on the wall. By sunrise, I was in the kitchen, pouring myself a strong cup of black coffee and making a decision I should have made years ago. No more free rides. No more pretending I'm part of something that clearly doesn't want me. If they're going to treat me like a stranger, then that's exactly what I'll be. I didn't reply to Jessica's email. I didn't need to. She said enough. Instead, I picked up the boxed fountain pen I'd bought for Carl's big night, an expensive gift I thought might earn me even a crumb of respect, and shoved it into my desk drawer. Let him enjoy his promotion without the old man he didn't want around. Then I opened up my banking app and started canceling things: mortgage payments, car insurance, internet, water, electric. One by one, I pulled the plug on everything I'd been quietly covering for them over the past 6 months. Every click felt like taking back a piece of my damn soul. Midway through, my hands started trembling, not from regret, hell no, but from adrenaline. I realized how deep I'd sunk into this mess. I'd convinced myself that my wallet was the bridge holding us together. And the truth? It was. But it was a one-way bridge, and I was the only one walking across it. The next day, Emily showed up unannounced, like she sometimes did. She had a bag of takeout and that easy smile that reminded me so much of Marilyn. She's the only one who doesn't make me feel like a burden. We sat out back, eating General Tso's chicken right out of the boxes, watching the squirrels chase each other under the old oak I planted when Jessica was 5. "Grandpa," she said, picking at her rice, "I know Mom's been off lately, and Dad's acting like the world revolves around his damn job, but I see you. I see what you've done for all of us. I just wanted to say thank you." That girl. She could say 5 words and undo a week of bitterness. I smiled and nodded. "You're the only one who ever says it," I told her. She tilted her head. "You know, they're throwing that dinner Friday night. You still thinking of going?" I shook my head. "Your mom made it clear I'm not wanted." "Then I'll stay home too." I reached over, squeezed her hand. "No, you won't. You'll go and smile and be proud of your daddy. I'm not going to let this mess touch you, Emmy." She looked like she wanted to argue, but held back. Maybe she knew I'd made up my mind, or maybe she just understood that sometimes protecting the people you love means letting them go. After she left, I sat in the dark with a glass of bourbon, the same one Marilyn used to scold me about. "Cholesterol, William," she'd say, like a threat could stop age. But at 78, a glass of bourbon's the least of my worries. My phone buzzed 3 times that night, once from Jessica, twice from Carl. I didn't answer. I wanted them to stew a little, feel the silence they'd built around me. I was done begging to be included. From now on, they'd have to earn my presence. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. It was the kind of stillness that settles in after a storm, when everything's already been blown apart and there's nothing left to lose. I made my coffee like always, but this time it tasted different, sharper, stronger, like it was brewed with something more than just beans, resolve maybe, or maybe just bitterness finally boiling over. By noon, I'd gotten confirmation from the bank. All the automatic payments were officially shut off. No more free electric, no more paid gardener. If Carl wanted those hedges trimmed, he could haul his precious MBA out there and do it himself. I didn't bother calling to warn them. They'd find out soon enough, probably when the lights flickered or the Wi-Fi cut off in the middle of Carl's next Zoom call. Around 2, my phone rang. It was Jessica. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, she tried again. This time, she left a message. Her voice was tight, rehearsed. "Dad, I noticed the mortgage didn't go through this month. I assume it's some kind of mistake. Can you check with the bank?" "No, sweetheart, not a mistake, just the old man finally pulling the damn plug." Later that day, Emily called. Unlike her parents, she didn't dance around it. "Grandpa," she said, "Mom's freaking out. Dad's pacing around the kitchen like someone just repossessed his soul." "Good," I said. "Let him pace." "You really did it, huh? Cut everything off?" "Sure did." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you feel better?" I didn't answer right away. "I feel lighter," I finally said, "like I stopped carrying dead weight that didn't even know it was being carried." Emily sighed. "I don't blame you. I just wish it hadn't come to this." "Me too, baby," I said. "But you can't bleed yourself dry just to keep people comfortable." That night, Jessica finally came over. No warning, no knock. Just the sound of her SUV pulling into my driveway and a fist hitting my front door like she owned the place. I opened it and stood there, not moving an inch. "Dad," she snapped, brushing past me like she still lived here. "What the hell are you doing?" "Nice to see you too, Jess," I said calmly. She stormed into the living room and whirled around. The mortgage payment didn't go through. Neither did the car insurance or the utilities. Carl got a call from the bank. "You canceled everything." "That's right," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "All of it." "You can't just do that," she shouted, eyes wide. We have obligations, responsibilities." "No, Jessica," I said, my voice low but steady. "You do." She blinked like she couldn't quite process what I was saying. "You promised to help us. You said you wanted us to have a better life." "I did help," I replied. "I gave you a house, covered your bills, paid for things you never even thanked me for. But I never signed up to be your personal bank for life." Her face twisted. "This is about that dinner, isn't it? Because we didn't invite you?" "That dinner was just the match," I said. "The fuel's been piling up for years." She turned away, arms crossed, muttering under her breath. "Carl said this would happen." I almost laughed. Of course he did. Carl, the puppet master, always pulling strings with that smug accountant grin. "Tell Carl," I said, "he better start figuring out how to live like a grown man." She looked back at me, eyes glassy with something between anger and disbelief. "You're serious, aren't you? Dead serious." She stormed past me again and slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I didn't chase her. I poured myself a bourbon, sat down in Marilyn's old rocking chair, and exhaled. They wanted a life without me in it. Well, now they had it. The phone didn't stop ringing for the next 2 days. First Jessica, then Carl, then Jessica again, then nothing for a while. And then came the messages, texts full of guilt, confusion, subtle threats disguised as concern. "We just need time to adjust, Dad." "Do you really want to drive your only daughter away?" "Think about Emily." All of it aimed at pulling me back in, like a fish on the line that didn't realize it was already halfway filleted. I didn't reply to any of it. Let them sit in that silence. Let them feel what it's like to reach out and get nothing but air. I'd felt that exact thing for years. At birthdays they forgot, at family dinners I wasn't invited to, every time I fixed a leak or changed a furnace filter and walked out without even hearing a thank you. And through all that noise, the only person who gave a damn was Emily. She came by that Thursday with a box of pastries and a worried look in her eyes. "They're losing their minds," she said, setting the box on my counter. "Mom's crying, Dad's ranting about financial ruin. It's a mess." I poured her a cup of coffee and sat down across from her at the kitchen table. "Good," I said flatly. "Maybe now they'll understand what I've been doing for them all this time." "They think you're doing this to hurt them," she said softly. I laughed once, short and bitter. "I'm not trying to hurt them. I'm trying to stop them from bleeding me dry." Emily nodded slowly. "They won't see it that way." "Then they'll never see anything clearly," I said. She took a sip of coffee and looked out the window. "I think I'm going to move out," she said. "I've been saving up. And with all the screaming and blame being thrown around at home, I just can't take it anymore." I looked at her, this 25-year-old woman with more sense than her parents combined. "You'll be all right?" "I'll be better than all right," she said. "I just need some space and peace." "You got my full support," I told her. "You ever need anything that's not a mortgage, I'm here." That made her smile. The next morning I canceled the last remaining payment I hadn't touched yet, the gardener. That might have seemed petty, but to me it was symbolic. It meant I was truly done. Let Carl push a lawnmower for once in his life. Let Jessica learn how to program a sprinkler system instead of shopping for throw pillows. If they wanted a perfect home, they could build it with their own damn hands. Sunday came, and with it a knock at the door, not a buzz, not a text. A knock. I knew who it was before I even stood up. Jessica. I opened the door. Her eyes were red, her blouse wrinkled. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Dad, please," she said. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside and motioned toward the kitchen. She walked in like someone entering a courtroom. unsure whether she was the lawyer or the defendant. "You canceled everything," she said once we sat. "All of it. Do you know what that's done to us?" "I know exactly what it's done," I said. "It forced you to look at the life you built on my dime." "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." She dropped her head into her hands. "We can't keep up. Not without your help." "Then maybe you shouldn't have bought a lifestyle you couldn't afford." Her head jerked up, her expression sharp. "You helped us? You said you wanted us to have this house." "And I gave it to you," I said. "But that doesn't mean I signed up to bankroll the rest of your life." She went quiet. I didn't speak either. Let the silence do its work for once. Eventually, she stood up. "If we lose the house, if Emily moves out, everything's going to fall apart." I nodded slowly. Sometimes things have to fall apart so people finally learn how to stand on their own. Jessica didn't reply. She just stood there, arms hanging by her sides, like all the steam had finally leaked out. She looked smaller than usual, not weak exactly, just deflated. For a second I thought she might say something real, something raw. But she didn't. She turned and walked out without another word, pulling the door shut behind her with a quiet click. I didn't follow. I sat at the kitchen table long after she left, staring at the spot she'd just been in. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. My thoughts kept circling the same point. How the hell did we get here? A man gives and gives, thinking it's enough. Thinking the bills paid and the problems fixed will mean something, build something. Turns out all it builds is silence. And the worst part? You don't realize you're invisible until you stop paying to be seen. That evening, I called Emily. "Grandpa?" she answered, her voice tight. "They came home like a tornado. Mom cried for an hour. Dad said you were cutting us off like some heartless banker." I sighed. "I'm sorry you have to be in the middle of this." "You didn't do anything wrong," she said quickly. "I told them that too. You gave more than enough." "You still planning on moving out?" "Already packing. I found a place. It's not big, but it's mine." There was pride in her voice. I couldn't help but smile. "Good," I said. "You need to live your own life, not get sucked into theirs." "I'm trying," she said softly. "But it's hard watching them unravel." "I know it is." She hesitated for a second. "Grandpa, are you sure you're okay?" "I'm better than I've been in years." It wasn't a lie. Monday morning I woke up early like always, made eggs, toast, black coffee, read the paper. But this time I didn't spend the day fixing someone else's problem. I walked down to the local rec center. They'd posted a flyer last week about a group for seniors, book discussions, movie nights, gardening workshops, stuff I'd always ignored. But now, I figured, what the hell? I had time. Might as well use it for something that didn't make me feel like a doormat. The receptionist was surprised when I signed up. Said I was the first new member in over a month. I told her I wasn't good at sitting still anymore. That got a chuckle out of her. That night I made chili, real chili, the way Marilyn used to like it, with a little extra cumin and way too many beans. I poured myself a bourbon and sat on the porch with a bowl in my lap, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. The world felt quieter now, not emptier, just quieter. Like I'd finally found the off switch to all the noise that used to wear me down. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. A message from Carl this time. One line. "This is going to affect your relationship with your daughter forever. Hope it's worth it." I stared at it for a long time before I deleted it. No reply, no drama. He'd said it like a threat, but to me, it sounded like freedom. If this was the price of being respected, I was more than willing to pay it. The next day, I passed by their house on my way to the store. The lawn was overgrown. The porch light was out. Jessica's car was gone. Carl's, too. I didn't slow down. At the grocery store, I ran into Horace Jenkins, an old friend from my inspector days. We talked about arthritis, rising gas prices, and the Braves' miserable season. When he asked about Jessica, I just shrugged and said, "She's figuring things out." He didn't press. Back home, I opened a fresh bottle of bourbon and thought, maybe for the first time in years, that life might actually be mine again. That thought stayed with me longer than I expected. I felt it when I cleaned out the garage and found an old fishing rod I hadn't touched since before Marilyn passed. I felt it when I made a pot of stew from scratch, without relying on some dusty old recipe card. I even felt it when I sat alone on the porch and didn't check my phone every 10 minutes, wondering if Jessica or Carl had finally come to their senses. They hadn't, and I was starting to believe that was for the best. Emily stopped by the next evening, her arms full of grocery bags and a bottle of wine tucked under one arm. "I got my keys," she said with a grin. "Move-in day's this weekend. You free Saturday?" "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I said, stepping aside so she could come in. We cooked together, like we'd done so many times before. Lasagna, this time her choice. I chopped onions while she stirred the sauce and told me about her new job project and her weird new neighbor who painted his fence turquoise. I laughed more in that hour than I had in the last year. After dinner we sat out back, sipping wine as the sky turned a bruised shade of purple. "They're still mad," Emily said eventually. "Mom and Dad, still blaming each other." "Let them," I said. "Maybe it'll finally make them look in a mirror." "You think they'll ever talk to you again?" I took a long sip before answering. "If they do, it'll be on my terms. Not because I paid a bill or bailed them out." She nodded, thoughtful. "I used to think family meant doing anything for each other. Now I think it means knowing when to stop being used." "Smart girl," I said. That Saturday I helped Emily carry boxes into her new apartment. It was a cozy one-bedroom near Piedmont Park with hardwood floors and a little balcony that overlooked a dog park. She was nervous, excited, proud, and I was proud too. She didn't ask me for a dime, paid her own deposit, moved her own things, stocked her fridge without so much as a hint of expectation. The only thing she asked was for me to be there. That was enough. When we finished, we sat on folding chairs and split a pizza, the box balanced between us on an unopened bin of books. "This is a big step," she said. "You'll be fine." "You sure you're going to be okay on your own?" I gave her a look. I've been on my own for years. I just didn't know it until now." She smiled, but her eyes looked sad. "They're going to lose the house, Grandpa. It's only a matter of time." "They'll survive," I said. "Even if they don't thank you?" I shrugged. "I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because I thought that's what love looked like. And now? Now I know love doesn't mean letting people treat you like a doormat." That night, after I got home, I found a letter in the mailbox, handwritten, Jessica's handwriting. I took it inside, poured myself a drink, and sat in the living room with it in my lap for almost an hour before I opened it. It started with a list of the bills I'd canceled: mortgage, car, utilities. Then it turned into a guilt trip disguised as an apology. "We made mistakes. You were always there. We don't want to lose you." But it was what came at the end that stuck with me. "We just don't know how to fix this." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Neither do I thought. But I know one thing for sure. Fixing it can't mean going back to the way things were. That sentence echoed through my head all night. I didn't sleep. Not from stress, those days were behind me, but because I couldn't stop thinking about how many years I spent building a relationship that only stood as long as my wallet was open. I'd poured so much into Jessica and Carl's life that I forgot to leave anything for myself. That letter, folded neatly on my kitchen table, didn't make me angry. It didn't even make me sad. It just confirmed what I'd finally come to accept. They wanted forgiveness without change. And I wasn't playing that game anymore. The next morning I called my lawyer, told him to draw up new papers, not to disown Jessica, not to erase her, but to make things clear. The house, mine. The savings, mine. My assets wouldn't be spent keeping up their lifestyle anymore. Emily would get her share in time. The rest would go to charities Marilyn and I used to support. I wasn't doing it out of spite. I was doing it to make sure the years I had left weren't defined by guilt or manipulation. Later that afternoon, Emily came over. She walked in with a fresh bag of groceries and a look in her eyes like she already knew something had shifted. "I saw Mom crying this morning," she said. "Said she doesn't recognize you anymore." "I think she's finally seeing me clearly," I said. We sat outside on the porch while the late fall breeze tugged at the wind chimes Marilyn had hung years ago. Emily pulled her sweater tight. "She asked me to talk to you again," she said quietly. "Said maybe I could convince you to soften your stance." "You think I'm being unfair?" She shook her head. "I think you're finally standing up for yourself. I just hate being the bridge between two cliffs." I reached over and patted her hand. "You're not the bridge, sweetheart. You're the reason I haven't burned the whole thing to the ground." She smiled a little, but there was worry behind it. I knew she wanted peace. I wanted it too. But peace built on silence and sacrifice isn't peace. It's surrender. I wasn't going back to that. 2 days later, Carl showed up at my door. He didn't call, didn't text, just knocked, sharp and impatient like always. I didn't even pretend to be surprised. "I need to talk," he said, stepping inside before I could answer. I didn't offer him coffee, didn't offer him a seat. Just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. He didn't waste time. "We can't afford the house," he said flatly. "The payments, the taxes, it's too much. You know that." "I knew it when you bought it," I said. "You didn't listen then. We thought you'd keep helping. And that's the problem." His jaw clenched. "Look, I know I've said things I shouldn't have. We were under pressure. Jessica didn't mean what she wrote." "Yes, she did," I interrupted. "And so did you." He shifted on his feet. "So that's it? You're just going to let your family fall apart?" "I'm not letting anything fall apart," I said. "I'm letting it rebuild itself, without leaning on me like a crutch." Carl was silent. Then his tone changed, softer, maybe even sincere. "What do we do now?" "You figure it out," I said. "You sell, you downsize, you budget. You live like the rest of us, within your means." He didn't argue. For the first time in a long time, he didn't look defiant or smug. He just looked tired, like a man who finally understood the weight of a life he built on borrowed strength. He nodded once and walked out without another word. I watched him drive away, and for the first time I didn't feel guilty. That was a new feeling for me. For most of my life, guilt was the default setting. Didn't make it to Jessica's piano recital when she was 9, guilt. Missed her high school prom photos, guilt. Didn't say "I love you" enough after Marilyn passed, more guilt. And when I couldn't express affection the way they wanted, I handed over money instead. Like a damn currency exchange, emotion for dollars. But watching Carl's car disappear down my street, I felt nothing but calm. I spent the rest of that afternoon pruning the apple trees in the backyard. The same trees I'd planted when Jessica was little, back when we still did things together. Back when she used to run barefoot through the grass and climb into my lap with sticky fingers and a popsicle smile. That little girl, the one who loved me just for being her dad, I didn't know where she went. Somewhere along the line, she turned into someone who kept a running tally of what I owed her. Emily called that evening. I didn't even need to ask how things were at her parents' place. The tension buzzed through the phone line like static. "Dad's been quiet," she said. "Which is worse than yelling. Mom's just lost." "She'll figure it out," I said. "You think they'll really sell the house?" "They won't have a choice," I replied. "The math doesn't care about pride. I still can't believe it came to this." "I can," I said. "It was always going to end this way. I just dragged it out longer than I should have." Emily sighed. "I feel like I'm watching something collapse in slow motion." "Maybe it needs to," I told her, "so something better can be built in its place." The next morning, a realtor sign appeared in their front yard, bold red letters, "For sale." I drove by it on my way to the pharmacy, didn't stop, didn't even slow down, just looked at it through the psych windshield and kept going. Funny how something that big could look so small from a moving car. That night Jessica called, not to yell, not to plead, just to talk. "I saw you drive by," she said. "Didn't think you'd still come down our street." "It's still part of my town," I said. "I won't reroute my life just to avoid seeing a mistake." There was a pause. "It's happening," she said. "The open house is this weekend." "I know." Another silence, then softer. "Do you think we'll be okay?" "I think," I said carefully, that you'll have to be, and that's not a bad thing. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. For the first time, maybe ever, she just listened. And I realized in that moment, maybe something was shifting. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a road back. But it wouldn't be paved with my money. It'd be paved with honesty, humility, and time. Sunday, Emily invited me over for dinner at her new place. No occasion, no guilt. Just two people who actually wanted to spend time together. I brought a bottle of cider I made from the apples in my yard, first batch I'd made in years. We ate pasta and garlic bread on her tiny balcony, watched the city lights blink on as the sun dipped below the skyline. "This is the best meal I've had in a long time," I said, and I meant it. Emily smiled. "It's not the food, it's the company." And damn if that didn't hit me harder than anything Jessica or Carl had said in the past year. Because here, in this small apartment, with this one person who truly saw me, I finally felt like I belonged. Not bought, not tolerated, just wanted. That feeling lingered with me all the way home. I drove through the quiet Atlanta streets with the windows cracked, letting the fall air rush through the car, for once. I wasn't going home feeling like something was missing. I wasn't mentally preparing for another cold voicemail from Jessica or some passive-aggressive message from Carl. I was just content. And I realized something. That simple feeling of peace. I hadn't felt it in years. Back at the house, I set the empty cider bottle on the counter and looked around my kitchen. Same worn linoleum, same creaky cabinet hinges, same old clock that was 5 minutes fast. Marilyn's house. My house. The only place that had stayed true while everything else shifted. It didn't need granite countertops or smart appliances to feel like home. It just needed honesty. And lately, it was the only place where I could breathe. On Monday, the for sale sign in front of Jessica and Carl's house had a new sticker slapped across the bottom. Price reduced. I wasn't surprised. That neighborhood wasn't made for people like them. It was made for folks who earned that lifestyle, not those who borrowed it on someone else's dime. I drove past again, didn't even glance toward the windows, but that night my phone rang. And for the first time in weeks, I answered when I saw Jessica's name. Her voice was shaky. "We got an offer. It's less than we hoped." "You'll take it," I said gently, "because it's time to stop hoping for someone to fix things for you." She didn't argue. "I know," she said. "Carl's angry. He thinks we should fight for more." "Then let him fight," I said. "But if you're smart, you'll think about what comes after." She hesitated. "After what?" "After the house is gone, after the lifestyle ends, after you stop measuring your worth by square footage and what the neighbors think." There was silence on the line, but it wasn't the hard, closed-off silence from before. This one felt open, like something inside her had started to crack, but maybe in a good way. "I didn't mean to treat you the way I did," she said suddenly. "I just got caught up. The house, Carl's promotion. Everything felt like it was finally working, and I didn't want anything to mess that up. So, you left me out," I said. She didn't deny it. "I did," she admitted, "and I regret it." For a second I said nothing, just listened to the sound of her breathing, waiting for me to speak. "Regret's a start," I finally said, "but it's not a fix. You want to fix this, Jessica? You got to learn how to show up without expecting a handout." "I can do that," she said, her voice small but steady. "We'll see," I replied. We didn't talk long after that, but it was the first conversation in a long time that didn't end with one of us slamming a door, literal or otherwise. That weekend I invited Emily over again. We grilled burgers, sat on the porch, and she told me about a project she was leading at work. She lit up when she talked about it, animated, driven. She wasn't just building a career, she was building a life, a real one. At some point she leaned back and looked at me with those eyes that always saw more than she let on. "You think things will ever go back to normal with Mom and Dad?" I shook my head. "No." She frowned. "But maybe that's a good thing," I said. Normal wasn't working. She nodded slowly. "So what now?" Now, I said, looking out at the oak tree we planted the year Jessica was born. Now we wait, and we see who wants to build something real and who just misses the benefits. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. Emily knew what I meant, knew what it took for me to draw that line, knew how long I'd allowed myself to be steamrolled by obligation disguised as love. And I think, in that moment, she understood that I wasn't just setting boundaries for myself. I was showing her what it looked like to finally demand respect, even from your own blood. A few days later, I got a voicemail from Jessica. No drama this time, no crying or emotional blackmail. Just a simple update. We accepted the offer. We close in 3 weeks. We'll be moving into a condo near Sandy Springs. Smaller, affordable, within our means. Thought you should know. That was it. I replayed it twice, not because I didn't believe it, but because for the first time in a long while, I actually heard something in her voice that felt real. Humbled, maybe, honest, tired, for sure, but real. Later that afternoon, Carl sent me a message too. I didn't expect that. He never was one for straight talk unless it came with a spreadsheet and a sense of superiority. But this message was short, to the point. You were right. We weren't living. We were performing. I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted to say thanks. I didn't respond. Not because I was holding a grudge, but because some things don't need a reply. Sometimes acknowledgement is enough. Sometimes the lesson speaks louder when it lands in silence. That weekend, I finally went through the old boxes in the attic, Marilyn's recipe books, Jessica's childhood art projects, photo albums with yellowing pages and dog-eared corners. I took my time. Let the memories come. Some stung. Most didn't. By the end of the day, I had 3 neat piles: keep, donate, and burn. That last one wasn't about bitterness. It was about letting go. I built a small fire pit in the backyard with some leftover bricks from an old renovation project. Nothing fancy, just enough to do the job. And when the sun dipped low, I lit it up and tossed in the stack I'd labeled burn. Tax records, old bank statements, receipts for things I'd paid for over the years that nobody ever remembered. Evidence of a life spent supporting everyone but myself. It wasn't revenge, it was release. Emily showed up unannounced, as she often did. She didn't ask what I was burning, just grabbed a chair and sat beside me, a blanket draped over her shoulders, her eyes reflecting the flickering orange light. Feels like an ending, she said quietly. More like a clearing, I replied, making space for something new. She nodded. You think Mom and Dad will actually change? I think they'll have to, I said. Life doesn't give discounts forever. She leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she did when she was 10 and scared of thunderstorms. We didn't say much else. The fire crackled, the wind rustled the branches, and for a few precious minutes, everything felt whole. When she left that night, she hugged me a little tighter than usual. The next week came and went with no drama, no surprise visits, no demands, just space, real, necessary space. Then on Sunday morning I heard a knock at the door. Jessica. She stood there holding a small cardboard box, no makeup, hair pulled back, wearing a plain hoodie and jeans. Not the polished version of herself I'd gotten used to over the years. This was the daughter I remembered from long ago. I found these when we were packing, she said. Thought maybe you'd want them. Inside the box were old Father's Day cards, drawings she'd made in 2nd grade, and a framed photo of the 3 of us from a camping trip in Blue Ridge, back when life was simpler, before everything got so damn expensive. I took the box, looked her in the eyes, and said the one thing I knew she needed to hear. Thanks for remembering. Jessica gave a small nod, eyes dropping to the porch floor like she couldn't quite hold my gaze. For the first time in I don't know how long, there was no tension between us, no undertone of manipulation or guilt, just 2 people standing in the quiet aftermath of a storm they both helped create. She didn't ask to come in, and I didn't offer. We weren't there yet, and maybe we'd never get there again. But for once, that didn't feel like a tragedy. It It felt like truth, honest, raw, and necessary. I know I've said a lot of things I can't take back, she finally said, and I'm not asking you to forget them. I want to try to be better, for real this time. I nodded once. Trying's a good place to start. She gave a tight smile and turned to head back down the steps. I watched her walk to her car, that old Honda I'd helped her buy in college. She looked back once before getting in. That moment, small as it was, meant more to me than any of the dinners or gifts or checkbook apologies from the last 10 years. Later that day, I opened the box she gave me again. Flipping through the drawings, the cards, the memories, one stuck out. A crayon picture of me holding her hand, both of us smiling under a big yellow sun. At the bottom, in crooked handwriting, it said, "My hero, my daddy." I set it on the mantel, not because I believed I'd been a hero lately, but because it reminded me of who I used to be, and maybe, just maybe, who I could still be. On my terms. The following weekend, Emily invited me to her place again. She'd gotten a new table from a flea market, proudly restored it with her own hands. I helped her level the legs and seal the top. As we worked, she told me about a coworker who kept flirting with her and how she wasn't sure if it was charming or weird. "Sounds like both," I said. She laughed. "I'm still figuring it out. That's half the fun." She looked up from the sanding block. "You think you'll ever, start over with someone?" The question caught me off guard. "You mean date?" She nodded. "You're not dead, Grandpa," I chuckled. "I'm 78, Em." "So?" I didn't answer right away. Truth is, I hadn't thought about it. After Maryland, I figured that chapter was done. But lately, with the weight off my chest and my house finally feeling like mine again, the idea didn't feel so crazy. "I guess we'll see," I said. "Stranger things have happened." When I got home that night, I sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea, no bourbon this time, just clear-headed calm. My phone buzzed once, Jessica again. This time, she sent a photo. Her and Carl standing in front of a moving truck, big smiles, tired eyes. Caption, "New chapter, wish us luck." I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. Instead, I forwarded it to Emily. She responded in seconds. Progress. Yeah, that's what it was. Not reconciliation, not a full reset, just a slow, steady shift in the right direction. For once, everyone was dealing with their own lives instead of expecting me to patch every hole in the roof. It felt right. The next morning, I picked up the phone and called the senior center again. Signed up for a Thursday cooking class. Figured if I was going to eat better, I might as well learn how to do it properly. And who knows? Maybe I'd meet someone who liked a stubborn old man who finally learned how to say no without apology. I was finally building a life that was mine. And for the first time in decades, I wasn't scared of what came next. Thursday rolled around, and I showed up to that senior center cooking class 10 minutes early, just like I always did with everything. I didn't know what to expect. Maybe a few quiet folks chopping vegetables and mumbling about cholesterol. But instead, I walked into a room full of life, laughter, clinking bowls, the smell of fresh basil in the air. It wasn't flashy, wasn't fancy, but it was full of people who weren't trying to prove anything to anyone. The instructor, a retired caterer named June, had a voice like a raspy jukebox and hands that moved like lightning. She put me to work slicing onions for a pasta sauce and didn't give a damn that I was new. And I liked that. I liked being useful without being obligated. By the end of the hour, I'd made a passable penne arrabbiata and found myself actually looking forward to next week. June gave me a wink and said, "Not bad, cowboy. You're trainable." I hadn't smiled like that in a while. When I got home, there was another message from Jessica, a photo of Emily helping unpack boxes in their new condo, no caption. Just a moment frozen in time, Emily laughing, Carl bent over a pile of dishes, Jessica in the background holding a plant that used to sit on my porch. I stared at it for a while, before saving it to my phone. No response again. Still wasn't ready to open that door all the way. But something inside me had started to shift, Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe something close to it. Saturday afternoon, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. Visit Marilyn's grave. I brought fresh tulips, her favorite. The cemetery was quiet, just a few birds chirping and the hum of cars in the distance. I knelt by her stone and brushed off the leaves that had gathered around the base. The inscription still hit me in the chest every time. Beloved wife, fierce mother, gentle friend. I think you'd be proud, I said out loud. Took me long enough, but I finally said no. I told her everything, about Jessica, about Carl, about Emily finding her own feet, about the fire pit and the cooking class and the possibility, however faint, of someone new. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Marilyn always said grief wasn't something you got over. It was something you learned to carry. I'm learning, I whispered. When I got home, there was a letter on the porch, handwritten, again. This time from Carl. It was shorter than Jessica's, but it hit harder. William, I resented you for a long time. Thought you were cold, distant. Thought money was how you showed love, and I hated you for it. But now that I'm the one trying to stretch every dollar, trying to hold things together with a smile and a budget, I get it. I see what you did for us. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to say thank you anyway. Carl. I folded the letter and sat down with it in my lap. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was more honest than anything I'd ever gotten from him. And for a man like Carl, who'd built his whole identity around control and success, admitting failure was probably the closest he'd ever get to redemption. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe we'd have dinner someday, maybe not. But for the first time, the idea didn't fill me with anger. It just felt possible. And sometimes that's enough. I set Carl's letter aside, poured myself a glass of iced tea, and stepped out onto the back porch. The sun was beginning to dip low, stretching shadows across the yard. I looked out over the grass, now neatly trimmed, the flower beds starting to fill out again with late bloomers. It wasn't just the yard that looked better. It was me. I could feel it in my bones, in the way I stood, in how I breathed. I wasn't bitter anymore, wiser, sure, hardened, maybe. But the sharpness had dulled. The resentment had burned off like morning fog, leaving something steadier behind. Emily called that evening. Mom told me you got Carl's letter, she said. She didn't read it, but she said he was quiet afterward. Real quiet. That's probably the first real thing he said in years, I told her. You going to talk to him? Eventually, I said. But not because he needs it. Because I'm ready. Emily was silent for a moment. Then she said, I'm proud of you, Grandpa, for all of it. I'm proud of you too, I said. You stuck with your own path when it would have been easier to follow theirs. She laughed. Well, I learned from the best. The next Thursday, I went back to the cooking class. June handed me a cutting board and pointed at a pile of bell peppers like she was running a boot camp. Chop fast, old man, she said with a grin. You're holding up the sauce. You like bossing people around, don't you? Damn right, she said. After class, she offered me a ride home, said she was heading that direction anyway. We talked about our kids. Hers were grown and scattered across the country. We talked about music, about how everything on the radio sounds the same now. We didn't talk about death or regret or old wounds, and I was grateful for that. Before I got out of the car, she looked at me and said, You're not as grumpy as you pretend to be. Don't ruin my reputation. Too late, she said, then winked and drove off. That weekend I got a text from Jessica, one sentence, We'd like to invite you to dinner. I stared at it for a long time. No guilt, no strings, just an invitation. I didn't answer right away. Took the day to think, to ask myself if I was ready, not to forgive blindly, but to sit at the table again and see who they'd become without my money holding up the roof. On Sunday evening, I called her. Okay, I said, one dinner, but I'm not paying for the wine. Jessica laughed, really laughed, and it sounded more like the daughter I remembered than anything I'd heard from her in years. That Friday I went to their new condo, smaller, like she'd said, simple, a little cramped, but it was clean, modest, and didn't reek of pretension. The dining table was a second-hand one Carl had refinished himself. There were no servers, no catered dishes, just spaghetti, salad, garlic bread, and a chocolate cake Emily had brought for dessert. We ate, we talked, and no one asked for anything. Jessica thanked me for coming. Carl kept the conversation light, didn't once bring up the past. Emily smiled like someone who'd been waiting a long time to see something like this. After dinner, I stepped out on their small balcony with a cup of coffee. Jessica joined me a moment later. "I know we've got a long way to go," she said, voice quiet, "but I want this to be real." "So make it real," I replied. "It starts now." She nodded, eyes glassy, and didn't say another word. And for the first time in a long damn time, I believed her. We stood there a while, Jessica and I, listening to the city hum around us. Cars down below, someone laughing in another building, a dog barking a few blocks over, ordinary sounds. But in that moment, they felt like music. For once, we weren't rushing through anything. No expectations, no tension. Just presence. I finished my coffee and handed her the mug. "Tell Carl it was a good meal." "I will," she said. "He worked hard on that sauce." "Didn't taste like it came from a jar," she smiled. "It didn't." Back inside, Emily was helping Carl with dishes. She looked up and mouthed, "You good?" I gave her a nod. She grinned and turned back to the sink. I left after that. No drawn-out goodbye. No emotional speech, just a quiet wave and a "thanks for dinner." They didn't try to stretch it into something it wasn't, and that might have been the biggest step of all. The next morning I woke up early like always, made eggs, toast, coffee, sat on the porch and watched the sun creep over the rooftops. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel wounded. I just felt even, balanced, maybe for the first time in my life. A week passed, then another. No chaos, no drama, just life. Emily stopped by with some homemade banana bread and news about a work promotion. She sat on the porch, feet kicked up on the rail like she owned the place. I told her she could have warned me. I'd have put on better socks. "Your socks are fine," she said, then added, "You know what else is fine?" I raised an eyebrow. "Here we go." "June," she said with a smirk. "Cooking class June. You like her?" "I do not," I said too quickly. "Uh-huh, sure. She bosses everyone around like she's running a battalion. You like that too," she teased. I chuckled and sipped my coffee. "Don't you have work to do?" I took the day off, wanted to make sure my stubborn grandfather didn't waste his golden years avoiding happiness. "Sounds like projection." She rolled her eyes and tossed a pillow at me. "You're impossible." Later that afternoon, I texted June, told her the class was the highlight of my week, and asked if she wanted to grab a coffee sometime outside the chopping block. Her reply came quick. "Only if you promise not to critique my biscotti." I laughed harder than I had in days. Friday evening, I met June at a little cafe downtown. Nothing fancy, just a quiet spot with strong coffee and those uncomfortable metal chairs no one ever actually enjoys. We talked for 2 hours straight. Not once did she ask about my past or Marilyn or the family drama. We talked about movies, about books, about how the tomatoes at the grocery store always look great but taste like disappointment. We talked like two people who didn't need anything from each other except honesty. When I walked her to her car, she touched my arm and said, "You're not bad company for a guy with strong opinions. And you're not bad for a woman who thinks oregano belongs in everything." She laughed, and that sound, God, that sound, stuck with me all night. The next day, I found myself humming while I raked leaves. Humming, of all things, like some man in a commercial for arthritis cream. But hell, I didn't care. Something had cracked open in me, and it wasn't pain. It was peace. That evening, I pulled out the old photo albums again, this time not to mourn, but to remember, to honor what was and recognize what still could be, because life wasn't over, it was shifting. And for once, I wasn't clinging to the past, I was looking forward. That was a strange shift after everything. Most of my life, I'd spent looking back at what I'd lost, what I gave, what never came back in return. But now, with the dust finally settled, I had space to look ahead without fear, without dread. The following Thursday I brought a loaf of banana bread to class. June took one bite and raised an eyebrow. "You steal this from your granddaughter?" "Made it myself," I said. She whistled. "Well, hell. You might be useful after all." After class we walked a long way around the building, past the rose bushes that hadn't bloomed since spring. She talked about trying a new recipe for apple cobbler. I said I'd bring the apples. She smiled and hooked her arm through mine like we'd done it 1,000 times before. It felt easy, and at my age, easy as gold. A few days later, Emily called with an idea. "Thanksgiving's coming up," she said. "I was thinking, maybe we all do it at your place this year." I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't want it, but because I wanted it too much. "You think they're ready for that?" I finally asked. "I think we are," she said. "All of us." So I said yes. That week I cleaned the house top to bottom, not because I needed to impress anyone, but because I wanted it to feel like a home again. I dug out Marilyn's old linen tablecloth, ironed it, laid it out smooth as memory. I even polished the silverware, though I knew damn well nobody cared. On Thanksgiving Day, they all showed up. Jessica brought a sweet potato casserole. Carl brought stuffing, dry, bland, overcooked, but he made it, and that mattered more than taste. Emily brought the turkey she'd spent all week prepping, and June brought her apple cobbler, smug as ever. We sat down together. No tension, no landmines under the conversation. Just a family, fractured once, maybe still a little cracked, but not broken. At one point during dinner, Carl looked across the table and said, "You were right. About everything. I didn't make a scene, didn't toast or preach, just nodded and passed him the gravy." After dessert, Jessica helped me with dishes. She didn't ask, just picked up a towel and got to work. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on us, even when we deserved it." "You gave up first," I said. "But you came back. That's what matters." We didn't say much else. We didn't need to. Later that night, after everyone left, I stepped out onto the porch with a cup of coffee. The stars were bright, the air crisp. Emily had cleaned up without being asked. Carl offered to fix the gate that had been sticking. Jessica asked for one of Marilyn's old recipes to try next week. And June? She kissed me on the cheek before leaving and said, "You're not half bad, William." I smiled to myself. Not bad for a man who was once called outside the family. I sat back in the porch chair and looked out at the yard, leaves rustling, wind stirring, peace in every corner of the property. I remembered that feeling from long ago, before things got complicated. Before money became a language, we all forgot how to speak properly. Now, finally, we were learning a new one. And for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't trying to buy love. I was living it. In its rawest, simplest form, earned, shared, real. My name is William. I'm 78, widower, grandfather, former wallet, current man of peace. This is my house. This is my family. And this is my life. On my terms. Finally.